Good evening. Nice to see you all here for the RTS television early evening event. This is the In Conversation with Peter Salmon. If you meant to go to the Turkish Cats film, it's next door. Now's the time to leave. I'm Kate Bulkley.
Baby Driver.
Or Baby Driver is also here. Now you be quiet. Don't undersell yourself. So I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm a business journalist. I write for Broadcast and various other publications, and I'm here basically to facilitate this conversation with Peter. If you don't know Peter, he's been in this business for over 30 years. He's done all kinds of jobs across all the major broadcasters. He's been a producer. He's worked on Crime Watch UK. He started as a trainee at the BBC. He's worked on Blue Peter. He tells me his cheesy leeks maker dish is very good, so that's good to know from that period. In the mid-1990s, Peter was head of factual programs at Channel 4, and he was director of programs at Granada TV. Then in 1997, he became BBC One controller. Of course, at that time, he commissioned successful sitcoms like, for example, Victoria Wood's Dinner Ladies and My Family. But it was also a very difficult period at the BBC, those of you who lived through it. And I know, Peter, that you were actually faced a lot of criticism during, you actually had a public rebuking from, I think it was Greg Dyke, who was then the DG of the BBC.
Now one of my best friends.
Now one of your best friends.
Do that to me.
When you think about that, I mean, was that a career? I was going to ask you about your career highlights. Was that a career low light?
Are we starting at the bottom?
Yeah.
It can only get better tonight.
Can
folks.
only get better.
No, I loved BBC One. I suppose when I look back at that period, I was about 40 years old, and I think there should be a kind of law passed that means you can't run big channels in television until you're about 50 or 50-something, when you've kind of lived a bit more and developed a kind of thicker skin.
An armor.
Sort of elephant hide. Because, you know, you are thrown into the fray, and you've got to deal with, you know, the ructions of Saturday night, comedies that don't work, big issues of state, all the rest of it. You've got to be ready for all that. And of course, it was also a time when the kind of digital world was rushing through the doors of broadcasting, and the money was kind of moving from analog to digital.
Yep.
It was kind of pretty hard to be in BBC One and not have the kind of funds available to, you know, fund the dramas and the comedies you wanted. Also, I had that funny thing happen to me, which only happens very rarely, thankfully, for a BBC One controller, which is that Britain won the Eurovision Song Contest in '97.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. It's a seminal moment, and whenever I watch it, it gives me a kind of cold sweat whenever I watch, because I remember we won it, and then we had to pay for it. It came to Birmingham,
right.
and that's when things got difficult for Birmingham at that point, and they deserve now all the investment they could possibly get. But we went to Birmingham, and I always remember, because it stripped £7 million, £7 million out of the BBC One schedule money. I had to play Blankety Blank on a loop for that summer. Do you remember that summer? A lot of you are probably recovering from that summer thinking, did I dream that, or was Jim Davidson on all the time? Right. But Danielle knows this, but we had to fund it ourselves. And so at the time when actually the cupboards were a bit threadbare in terms of finances, ITV were really good in that period. David Lidderman was in his pomp. Millionaire came in. Yep. And I think Millionaire was the show that kind of changed television for me. It was so impressive and dreadful what ITV did with that show. And, you know, so, you know, listen, they kind of make you what you are, those. Right. If they don't kill you, they make you stronger.
They make you better.
Yeah,
that's right.
It definitely made me stronger.
So in 2000, that's when you became director of BBC Sport, right?
And the job that Greg Dyke gave me, you're right.
Yeah. And you helped win back some very high-profile events. I mean, I think you oversaw the 2004 Summer Olympics, was that?
Yeah,
right?
we did in Athens, yeah.
And during that time, you began interactive coverage of the Wimbledon tennis. That was a real pioneering move.
All the courts, the red button. Yeah.
And I think, was it at that time you created the charity, the Sport Relief Charity, or was that later?
Yeah, no, we did, because I'd been a big Comic Relief supporter, and when I moved to BBC Sport, it was a kind of tough time. They were a bit of a sort of relegation team, just to borrow the kind of sporting metaphor. It'd been very tough. Sky had come in. Sky were rather brilliant. The BBC didn't quite have the money to compete for the big sports rights. Actually, Greg was a fantastic supporter, put a lot of cash into sport. But BBC Sport were undervalued, kind of underloved, didn't think an awful lot of themselves. Were rather brilliant at what they did, but just needed kind of cheering up. Yeah. And I'd been a supporter of Comic Relief, so I talked to Kevin Carhill, who was the kind of famous, rather brilliant CEO of Comic Relief, And we came up with a plan that in the down years, because Comic Relief was every 2 years then.
Right.
And we said, listen, wouldn't it be a bit
Let's
better
do the other
if
one.
every other, if it was Comic Relief, Sport Relief, Comic Relief, Sport Relief. And we invented the Sport Relief charity, which BBC Sport and Comic Relief did together. And it was wonderful public service entertainment.
Yeah.
And now it's raised £200 million. So
No,
it's
great.
it's a brilliant thing to have been involved in.
So just keeping on the sport theme for a minute, I mean, sport is really difficult now for public service broadcasters. It's really expensive. You talked about Sky coming into the market. I mean, if anything, it's gotten worse. I mean, we have BT in the market now. It's a very tough area for public service broadcasters. Is the era of sport on PSBs basically over, or do you think there's going to be some kind of reinvention? I
think there's so much sport, and there's so many different ways of filleting sport and packaging sport. I mean, look at the cricket rights that, I don't think we've had cricket on a PSB. Actually, it was on Channel 4 rather brilliantly, made by Sunset and Vine about 10 years ago. But it's a long time since live cricket was on the BBC. It's back on the BBC. I think, the kind of mixed ecology that football or cricket or rugby or whatever needs between profile and impact and recruitment and creating household names, supplying the right kind of exposure for their brand sponsors, all the rest of it, and the cash that comes in through the the Sky, BT, and other platform routes. I think that's that mixed ecology means there'll always be good sport on. I think on the big platforms, and the big platforms need big sport, of course. Thanks to listed events as well, it's still protected to get some of those kind of mega audiences. I think the big issue is going to be when the new OTT platforms start to play seriously in sport.
Yeah, when Amazon starts buying Premier League, then we have to worry.
Completely change the dynamics of that arena. But thankfully, hopefully, as long as the list is in place, then certain key properties will be protected for free-to-air telly.
So when you left BBC Sport, you joined an indie, the Television Corporation. You actually didn't stay there very long because it got sold.
It did.
Tanopolis.
I had a rather wonderful break clause in my contract.
Did you? Good. So you made some money.
That's
good.
Clever, yeah. I've insisted on putting those in ever since.
Good. Yeah. You rejoined the BBC then as Chief Creative Officer, and you oversaw all in-house BBC production. Big job. And then in 2008, you became Director of BBC North, and you set that up, and then you ran BBC Media City Hub in Salford. I mean, that's a lot of stuff for the BBC, particularly in terms of sort of outside of London, which I think is an interesting thing. So I thought that I would talk to you a little bit about that, sort of the nations and regions bit. I mean, you have a lot of experience outside of London. BBC Media City was in Salford, as I said. I think you were born
Granada.
in
I was at Granada in the 90s.
Right, that's right.
Director of programmes. I was at the, one of the best periods of my career was at BBC Bristol, the Natural History Unit, and running all the factual programmes there. So, I've had a lot of fun and overseen a lot of creativity, a lot of good things out of London. So I'm a big fan.
And of course, Salford's in Lancashire. You were born in Lancashire.
Yeah. So it was nice. No, there was something special about getting that gig. I loved it.
And of course, your wife's name is Lancashire. Sarah Lancashire.
I think that's going a bit too far.
Yeah,
actually.
Sarah Lancashire. Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to connect the dots here. It's all good journalists.
Cheese. I love Lancashire cheese.
You like Lancashire cheese?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of Lancashire Cricket Club.
So good.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But that's the end of it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons why you should know about this. Now, talk about sort of your view on nations and regions. There's been a lot of talk about what the policy should be.
Yeah.
Are we producing enough outside of London? When is it enough? How do we get there? Is it, what's the balance? So do we have the right balance now, or is it still way out of whack?
I think listen, I remember talking to David Attenborough years and years ago about the founding of the Natural History Unit in Bristol. And I think David, or one of the founding fathers of natural history, said to me, they remembered when the BBC took the decision, that brilliant bit of kind of television engineering, social engineering, to move natural history programmes to Bristol in the 1950s, I think it was. And people said, well, it won't work because it's a long way from the Natural History Museum in London, and therefore you'll be short on experts, dear chap, and all the rest of it. And there's always kind of resistance to that kind of change, and though it shouldn't take kind of 40 or 50 years to change things so profoundly. The Bristol media scene, as a consequence of that, incredible BBC decision to do that, and then all the factual programs and the animators and the digital stuff that came out of the sector down there, and now South Wales and Doctor Who, and we shifted Casualty across the bridge to Cardiff, and you know, that whole kind of media hub in the southwest of England. It happened because the BBC kind of had the balls and the investment and the kind of mandate. The BBC's got to do these things because of the way it's funded, the politics of broadcasting, and then, you know, Media City, and the huge structural change that involved. You know, it changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
We moved a lot of investment and a lot of people, created a lot of new jobs. It was really tough in the early days. But now when I go back, you know, it's such an amazing, thriving digital community. Anybody, a lot of good program makers here would probably use the studios. In Media City, a lot of the studios, of course, are closing in London. I'm sure they're going to do rather well from those economic changes in this city. But, you know, just a kind of sense of thriving cultural hub developing in that city. Radio 5 Live, BBC Children's, BBC Sport. I think it takes farsightedness, a bit of visionary behaviour, a bit of balls, a bit of risk-taking. Mark Thompson said to me, I saw Mark Thompson recently in New York, who was the DG behind a lot of that stuff. He said to me, you know, the big thing about Media City was doing it big enough so that, you know, when the economic cycles change in broadcasting, it's kind of big enough to survive. I mean, there is that thing, I think, in broadcasting where you can do too little or just a small amount. And so as a consequence, you know, somebody in London turns the lights out or presses a little switch over and the lights go out in your part of the country. They don't even notice because they're in London and they can't quite see it, or things get hollowed out. And I think, you know, the thing about those changes, if you think about what Red they're doing in Manchester, or what Granada did before them, or what the Natural History Unit have done in Bristol, or Doctor Who and that whole media hub in Wales, I think thinking big, having a plan and a strategy, getting the BBC at the heart of it. You know, I know, by the way, Coronation Street and Emmerdale were some of the kind of founding fathers of all of this as well. But actually, you know, I think the BBC's role in shifting the balance, the cultural balance, and the kind of financial balance in terms of investment across the UK is crucially important.
So, so are you saying, is it on screen, or do we have enough? In other words, is that enough? Or because, you know, there's a lot of controversy about should Channel 4 move out of London? You know, should we be done by quotas? You know, is it enough?
Well, it's a really great start, and it's important. I mean,
so should Channel 4 move? Would Channel 4 move? Would that be a good move?
I don't know if Channel 4 would make the difference in terms of the move. I thought once upon a time, 10 years ago, I thought it would. I would have loved them to move when we moved in the BBC all those years ago, when I thought that linear broadcasting was kind of it, that it was about those platforms. I'm not sure it is in quite the same way. I think Channel 4 spending power and probably underpinned by quotas or levels of investment is pretty important. I think it's really hard. Speaking as Indie, and we're one of the big indies, the notion that you can, you know, you just put your finger in the air and decide to open an office and recruit a good exec if you can find one and afford one, set up a development team, pitch for business from I mean, it's a big decision for an indie to take. So
are you doing it?
Yeah, we are doing a little bit of it. Yeah, but we're not doing enough of it, probably. We'd love to do more, but you need to feel the broadcaster's intent to spend the money there. So, you know, if Channel 4 was serious about upping its quotas or its levels of investment, and we thought that, you know, a range of commissioning, a certain amount of financial investment were going to be made in the regions and the nations, yeah, I think we'd be
part of
that process. Well, we've got one in Manchester, we've got one in Bristol, but could we be bigger? Could we do it more emphatically? Yeah, we could. We look at it. Richard, Lucinda and myself in the UK look at it all the time, and it's probably about timing. But, you know, hopefully Channel 4 and what they do next will be part of that.
Yeah. So today we had this announcement from the BBC about more money for children's, which I suppose doesn't really impact you because you don't really have a children's business, but a lot of it's for digital.
I'm going to start one now. Yes.
You're going to start a children's business. That's the news, by the way.
That's from now. Yeah.
Is that, again, with sort of your 30,000 foot, been in the industry a long time, is that going to help Salford? Because it's going to be, most of it will be up there, because it'll be CBBC, it'll be digital.
Massively. I mean, it's brilliant for the kids' business. It's brilliant for kids. It's a real, you know, it's the BBC stealing a bit of a sort of political and editorial march in terms of those audiences, you know, recruiting them, hopefully, for the long term, you know, pleasing their parents, young families, all the rest of it. I mean, CBeebies.
Well, if they don't do it, they're going to lose those kids.
Yeah, and CBeebies and CBC are brilliantly run services. It's such a well-run department that there's a lot of innovation through those programs. A lot of people who make them go on to do all sorts of amazing things in the industry. No, it's an amazing book support for Salford and Manchester. I mean, it's probably one of the reasons why I think if I was Channel 4 and I had to make a switch of some sort, I would probably do it be part of that environment. You know, you want to be with like minds. You want to be where the skills are. You want to be where the studios are. You want to be where there's a degree of, you know, critical mass, bit of a cultural hub. It's probably where I would prefer to be. But you know, you're right. I'm a Lancastrian.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the other thing you did before we get to Endemol Shine was you ran BBC Studios. You were actually the first head of BBC Studios. You were only there briefly, quite briefly, and then you decamped to Endemol Shine. So what's your reckoning? Is BBC Studios going to be the biggest indie in the country and basically hoover up commissions left, right, and center? And what's that going to do to the sort of, as we say, the ecology of how things are produced?
I think it's a challenge, but I think they'll be successful. It won't happen overnight. You know, it's a bit of a long haul, creating the culture, working out what you focus on, moving from one structure to another, figuring out where you want to be based, you know, how many bases, how many bits of the kind of UK map do you want to cover, what genres do you want to be in. I think it's going to be tougher in some genres than others, you know, where the kind of market values are highest in scripted or in formats. I think recruiting the talent and growing a big business in those areas is going to be tough. But, you know, I always said to myself, and I think it's absolutely right because I watch the output a lot, you know, the people who make Strictly or Watchdog or EastEnders or Glastonbury, you know, they've got some shit hot program makers, and they ought to be able to do a bit of damage. I mean damage, by the way, in a positive way, to the kind of, you know, the broadcast production ecology, and get a bit of business and hold on to a lot of their own business, because if they can hold on to that, you know, that leading edge skills provision, and some of those titles, and a bit of that chutzpah and energy that goes with being some of those great creatives, I think they can do it. I think it'll be a tough 2 or 3 years hanging on to some of the key talent, getting themselves established, getting through the kind of, you know, wading through the politics of BBC Trust, Ofcom, throughout it all. But yeah, I hope they succeed, because it's the old thing. It's a, you know, the UK production sector is rather fantastic. Lots of great digital skills. The world wants to buy our content. Probably competitions, you know, at the end of the day, is a pretty good thing. It keeps us all on our toes.
When you, if for example, they get a big portion of, say, the Channel 4 commissioning budget, that could hurt your current employer. I mean, this is the kind of thing you have to think about, I assume, as you're looking ahead.
Yeah, but I think, you know, I think the whole ecology, it is what it is. It's happening, and the whole system, the people we get commissioned by, the platforms we work on, the numbers of buyers, it's changing all the time. I mean, Channel 4 is a hugely important commissioner for us, but it's not the only one. There's a, you know, pretty broad, lively ecology, not just here but all over the world. So
you're not doing anything special to ring fence those shows that you've got on Channel 4?
No, we just got to make them
special deals, or taking less margin.
No, I wish that was the key to it. I mean, honestly, genuinely, the one thing that keeps the British independent sector broadcasting system so good is I don't think there are any deals. I think it's either good, it's either what broadcasters want. There are very few favours, and it keeps us all on our toes. Honestly, I think the sort of, you know, I work all over the world now, and it's the best. You know, I know there are queues for getting things commissioned. You know, I know broadcasters can sometimes make you tear your hair out, but the kind of honesty and straightforwardness of that system in terms of how decisions are made, I think is one of the, you know, it's the thing that keeps the UK sector at the top of the tree. It really is.
And so vibrant.
It's so important.
So now we're going to transition to what you're doing now. I know we've taken a long time talking about big picture things, but I thought that was important to kind of do that. So you're Chief Creative Officer of Endemol Shine. I think before we get into that, should we roll the clip? So this is a little sort of a look at what Endemol Shine's up to. Yes? Roll the clip, please.
That's a phrase I use quite a lot actually in development meetings. There's not enough millipedes. I want more. I sometimes just spring that on people. There's not enough millipedes. It just throws people.
When you say bringing the millipedes?
Just bringing the millipedes.
Right. So what's interesting about that is that,
Not now, obviously.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, where's the bucket? What's interesting about that is, some of us sort of think Endemol Shine, a lot of factual entertainment stuff. There's a lot of drama in there.
There is.
When you
all over the
joined,
world.
I mean, a lot of drama. Then we'll talk about that. What's interesting is when you joined, the merger had been going on for, I don't know, 18 months, maybe it was even 2 years. But it took a while to get the merger together. These were big companies, Shine, Endemol, Koi, trying to get it all together. There's a huge number of production labels. In fact, the data I was given by your people was 120 production companies in more than 28 markets. A portfolio of more than
name them all, or
I'm not. Yeah, you have to name them all. 700, or you can't get out of the room.
Yeah.
700 production titles across genres and platforms, 50 languages. I mean, my goodness. So, I mean, that's big. Has the merger, bringing all this stuff together, has it actually worked? I mean, what are the economies of scale? What's the creative economies of scale? What's the financial economies of scale?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I was kind of lucky in some ways because when Sophie Turner-Lang asked me to come and join the company, I think a lot of the kind of heavier lifting had been done. So, I'm not as aware of the kind of Endemol Shine, differences of culture or shows who owned what, who brought what to the marriage. I'm kind of aware now of, bringing Scandinavia in, or Spain, or the Aussies, some brilliant kind of producers all over the world, and fitting that to the kind of Endemol jigsaw. But I think it's like every family. It's pretty kind of lively at times. There are some big voices and big reputations, and there's a lot of outstanding talent. Some are in the room tonight who have got things to say, and they're pretty lively, and they've got views about how we run the place and about the kind of culture we want to develop. But I hope we've struck a decent balance. It's partly set by Sophie, I think. I'm not sure she's here, but she's very good at. She said to me, the reason why I joined, partly because I've always loved working with her, but she said to me, listen, I've got like a no arseholes policy. And I thought, well, that's enough for me. If you got no, that's good, because I've just been, you spend all your life trying to, sort out the arseholes a bit, and most people in the room are rather brilliant, millipedes or not, and it's just, I think it's a kind of company that we don't waste time. We're pretty straightforward. If stuff doesn't, make your ability to develop ideas and pitch ideas and win ideas better, then we can't be doing with it. We don't like time wasting. We kind of get on with things. I think there's a decent balance. Genuinely, I know this is the $64 million question between, degree of centralization, not doing the same thing 100 times over all around the world, creating the right kind of hubs for people to use, legally, operationally, financially, whatever it might be, because it's ridiculous if you just got a kind of 120 models like that, not having, the wrong sort of duplication. But I think respecting, creative differences and creative endeavor and backing punts and hunches, and doing some things when they seem rather unlikely, but who knows where the next great idea is going to come from. I think actually we strike a decent balance.
How do you describe yourself? I mean, are you do you think of yourself as sort of the creative Svengali who has to listen to ideas and then say, "Ooh, you should be working with this person"?
As if, you mean outside the millipedes? I think I'm like a kind of sheepdog, really. I like to think of myself as like a kind of good shepherd, but really I'm just kind of chasing. Somebody's just kind of go and get those, I think, from time to time you've got to kind of round people up. I think I'm trying to safeguard, the investment in and the room for creativity on the board, at a board level, to make sure that matters most of all, that when the discussions are had in that room about what matters, that there is allowed enough creative voice, backed up by a degree of experience. I always remember when I went to Granada, I said to the guys in Granada, in Manchester, I'm not going to be on the 6th floor. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, but I said I'm not going to be on the 6th floor with the rest of the suits. I'm going to be down with you, program makers, down everybody else on the 4th floor, because it'd be better if I'm down here with you. I'm amongst you. I can understand what's going on. it's going to be really important. And they went, we don't want you down here.
We don't want you down here, please.
So what do you mean? They said, no, we want you up there on the 6th floor. They're making decisions about our budgets.
Right.
They're doing things about our development spend.
Yeah.
They're taking views about the company, and we need somebody like you to, So they said, you won't enjoy it as much, but you need to live up there. And I think one thing I've learned from, genuinely from being a pretty senior creative guy, is you've got to fight for the space and the room and the scope for creativity, because sometimes the people who own or run companies don't get it. Sometimes they do, but I think it's really important. But you've also got to strike a sensible balance between that and people wasting time and wasting money. That's important as well.
So the UK business, I think, is clearly the biggest creative engine.
It is.
So how do you? In terms of can you talk about how big it is? Is it 50% of the business, 75% of the?
Yeah, well, it is big. It's the kind of pivot of the whole business, I think. I don't tell people in Spain or Scandinavia or America or Australia I said this. This is not going out to the former colonies.
Nothing. It won't be on the web.
No, I think the UK is really important because. Partly because of what we talked about earlier, which is the broadcast ecology. The channels here, public service going back for years, English language broadcasting, which people enjoy around the world, the closeness to the US scene, the fact we make stuff which is cost effective.
So how do you get collaborations to work then? If here is scripted and all that stuff, how do you make that work? You talked to me in the green room about the dating, the food, the is that how you make collaborations to work?
So to give you some sense of the UK, the UK is, we are by far the biggest traveller of international IP in the world. That's one of the things that we've done since the days of Big Brother and MasterChef. And I think we travelled 43 formats around the world last year. And I think 16 or 17 of them were from the UK.
Wow.
So the UK creates a lot of original content, which other people love and want to buy. And that's incredibly important. And we have a lovely thing at the heart of Endemol Shine that we do, which I don't think is unique to us, but I think it's run particularly well by Lisa Perrin, who might be here, and a bunch of other good colleagues, which is what we call the kind of creative networks. And the creative networks, in scripted and non-scripted, they've got a bunch of money, and we've got certain objectives, and they're connected to all our operating companies and labels all around the world. Everybody knows them. They're pretty much on first name terms with people all around the world in the remotest of territories, but also back in London. We get together, 10 or 12 times a year, and we talk about, dating or Big Brother or gambling or food, or whatever it is that we think is, some ambition that we should have, ought to boost in the company. And we have a bit of fun together, and we try and create the space to talk about ideas. Sometimes that's scripted. We have scripted gatherings where we talk and we swap stuff and we show clips. It's mainly non-scripted because non-scripted formats travel more speedily and more effectively than anything else.
So you have some real super brands. Big Brother is obviously a super brand. It's getting a little long in the tooth now. I was trying to think about how old it was. Is it 20 years old?
Yeah, 18 next year. Yeah.
18
in the UK, I think.
Okay, so 18 years old. How long can it really last?
It's got to last. A lot of the
it's got to last.
Well, yeah, it's got to last. MasterChef, Big Brother, your face sounds familiar, which you probably don't know, but it's probably the best travelled international bit of IP that people in the UK don't know. It's Stars in Their Eyes by any other name. Yeah. Keeping these things fresh, renewing them. It's having a tougher competitive time in the UK, Big Brother, but it's number one on Thursday nights in CBS in the States. It's huge all around the world. It's the biggest show in Israel. Blah blah blah. It's in different places in its cycle. You've got to get into it again, roll your sleeves up, and kind of renew it and make it different for a new generation. Same with MasterChef. The thing that we're really proud of is MasterChef is in a world where there are a lot of cookery programs, a lot of them are really good. It's the best travelled cookery format in the world. It's in 50 odd territories. And it started, it was revamped in Australia, and then it became the thing that it's become all around the world. And what's kind of amazing about those super brands and super formats, which I now really understand, is it's not just about them and keeping them healthy. It's particularly now, I think, in a world where everything's changing, the super brands and the super formats matter more than ever. They're a calling card to viewers, you know, when they scan the schedules and they're thinking about what they know, what they don't know, what they're going to give half a chance to. The fact that you own one of those big formats and you've spun it off and you've made it, you know, I thought rather successfully ITV with The Voice Kids, and I see that Strictly is going to be Strictly Junior in the States.
Junior,
We do Junior MasterChef in I think in 27 countries now. It's fun, and it's such a joyful, wholesome, brilliant thing, but it only exists because we really think about what the local iteration might be and how we can, you know, get someone to invest in it for the long term, because as a brand, it's so important for the company for the long term.
So we're going to show a clip of that, but before we do that, just answer me one question. Do you think that there are no new formats? I mean,
no, of course not.
I mean, when are we going to see a new super brand format? I mean,
I think it's kind of interesting about whether or not we'll ever quite see the like of some of those formats that, you know, the Idols and the Factors and all that lot that swept the world in a kind of year or two when platforms had a different scale, clout, heft, all the rest of it. But there are I see a lot of great things, you know, from, you know, what do I love? You know, I love Marigold Hotel. You know, I think Love Island's been pretty sensational. I love what we do with MasterChef. I think Hunted is incredible. We did on Channel 4. You know,
and that
so
did well
full
in
of
the
innovation.
States too, didn't it?
Did well in the States, and there's a really gorgeous, would you believe, Celebrity Hunted about to emerge on Channel 4. But you know, you got to kind of I absolutely think in the next year or two, given all the effort, you know, remember 75% of all new launches around the world are new non-scripted formats. I mean, and whether it's the interesting thing is going to be, again, a bit like sport, whether the next, just thinking about what happened with Grand Tour or Beastmaster, whether the next new non-scripted phenomenon is going to be launched by one of the new platforms or one of the linear broadcasters that need it most of all, I think is going to be an interesting jewel, because the cash going into the work and commitment going into fashion, some of that new generation is immense right now. So I'm pretty optimistic, and I'm pretty optimistic, by the way, given the firepower and the talent we've got. It'll be us.
Let's run the MasterChef Junior clip.
Thanks.
That's a big one for you.
Definitely. It is a big one for us.
Kids are always good. They're so authentic. Of casting, I would think, would be important in those shows. Get the right kids.
They're beautifully made. They're just made with the kind of attention to detail and the sort of enthusiasm. I mean, what's lovely, I think, is just how entertaining and also how wholesome it is. I mean, it's really hard to argue against the fact that those aren't great shows and kids aren't doing great things and can all cook better than we can.
Let's talk about digital creativity, because it's something that's becoming more and more important. We talked earlier about sort of the BBC putting money into digital. A lot of people are putting more money into digital. It's even hard to even call it digital, but you know what I mean. Stuff that's going online first, maybe not on television first. It's important to understand audiences. It's important to understand how to use YouTube. You know, you, meaning Endemol Shine, has worked in this space. I know you've repurposed content like Mr. Bean, for example. It's become a big brand, I think, on Facebook.
Bigger than Katy Perry.
Bigger than Katy Perry.
I love that. Who'd have thought? She's about to retire.
Is this on Facebook or YouTube?
Been beaten by Bean? Yeah, he's a superstar on Facebook. He's the biggest entertainment brand.
Really?
On Facebook, and he's bigger. Bean is bigger than The Simpsons, and in the top 20 of all of Facebook's properties, which is incredible. A lot of it driven by Asia, where they're mad for Bean, or, you know, and other things. But it is a real global superstar, and it's been interesting that because we kind of learnt the hard way, like a lot of big companies. You know, we've been in and out of digital in lots of different manifestations.
Well, you closed Endemol
Shine
Beyond, or whatever.
We've done a whole bunch of different things.
Remember Tim Hinks set it up, and it was all marvelous. Also, dancing and
anyway. But we learned a huge amount from it. You got to be in it. You got to do some things to understand the Bean stuff. The thing that we've got most of all, I think, in the last year, is the value of some of those brands. So whether it's Bean, or Fear Factor, or MasterChef, or Big Brother, or Wipeout, or some of those things that we've made for years and years and years. Got a few nice new things. I would like to show you something in a sec if I can. But I think the value of those, I think we've got 1 billion YouTube we had 1 billion YouTube plays last year, and I think 75% of them were for our television content. So
they say that TV content really drives it.
It's enormous in that space.
So
I mean,
does
not
it
just
make
on that
money?
platform.
Because I get it that
Yeah,
you need to
it
be
does.
there, and
Yeah, it doesn't make enough. It doesn't make the money we would like, given the money we make elsewhere in television. It's not, it's not quite, digital cents, analog pounds or dollars or whatever it might be. It's not that, but we want to grow it. It's currently only, 5% of our business. We want to grow it to be 20% of our business in the short term. So we've got big plans, but it will happen, I think, around our key areas of expertise and our key brands. I absolutely think that. But also, I think we've got to grow a few things that might be the Mr. Beans or the brands of the future. I think you've got to place some of those bets too, and you're probably going to love those things and do a bit of a loss leader on those things for a few years before you get to the point where you think you can launch them on the world.
So as Chief Creative Officer, and we're going to look at one of your original commissions in a second, as Chief Creative Officer, how much money are you actually putting into, say, digital first or original digital commissions?
Yeah,
is it a big
that's
chunk?
a really good point.
Is it growing?
I like to think it's more about the money coming in than the money going out. I mean, I think we've got to the point where we reverse the kind of, stacks of money going in and not much, going out and not much coming in. Yeah, I think we reversed that, but it took us a while to realise kind of how to do it. We've got a much more efficient, effective machine there in, the heart of, sunny Shepherd's Bush, doing a lot of that for us. And it is a mix between, operating that machine effectively and, as it were, scraping back what's yours from the big digital platforms and inventing some of the new stuff that will make money in the future.
Yeah. So the one you're going to show us, I think, is Simon's Cat.
Yeah, I just want to show it because it's a kind of curiosity. I'm sure a lot of people don't know Simon's Cat. I mean, lots of people have cats, but, we've got this animated cat. And I love this cat because, years ago I worked with Wallace and Gromit and, Nick Park and Peter and David and everybody in Aardman's. And they came through as, the hot animation property. We've been developing something called Simon's Cat, the company we bought, a little kind of whimsical 2D line drawing. And recently we've, surprised, we've got into colour. And quite soon we're going to take it to the States. And I think Simon's Cat's got this huge audience. We did a couple of launches of this stuff in the past couple of years, and you can just see the kind of downloads in the USA and UK went through the roof. And so there's this kind of,
So it's on your own site or on YouTube?
It's on lots of different, so everywhere. So
Okay,
Apple sponsored it big time, stickers, everything you can think of. And, let's face it, the algorithm isn't something like, the second most searched thing on the internet is cats. So
cats doing weird things.
Leave your imagination what the first one is, but I think Simon's Cat might someday be as big as the first one. So it's worth just having a look at Simon's Cat because we're about to give it a push, and I'll probably end up eating my own words. But I think by the end of the decade, Simon's Cat is going to be a household name and brand.
As big as Bean?
Well, ask Katy Perry. Okay,
let's see Simon's Cat, please.
I mean, it's a little bit of whimsy. I know people don't know it the same way they know MasterChef and Bean and all the rest of it, but it's about also kind of nurturing and growing some of the big brands of tomorrow. That's important to us as well.
Let's talk about how production is changing. I mean, we've touched on it already a little bit, talking about the big digital platforms. We've mentioned Facebook. We've mentioned YouTube. Sometimes we call them GAFA. I think there's another one. FANG. So Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon, and GAFA's Google, Apple, Facebook.
God, this is getting so in up here, isn't it?
Whatever.
We're already in the
big digital guys. So
platforms,
the financing has shifted a lot. I mean, they've got deep pockets. They're spending big money. You're working with them in a lot of places as well. So I'm sure we'll get to that. How does this? How does this affect what you're doing? Is it just a good thing because there's more money out there? Fantastic. More people to commission?
Listen, it's principally a great thing. It's a great, to be alive and be in content production and program production right now. It's an incredibly special and important time to be doing what we're doing and to seize all the kind of advantages and opportunities to create all the things we're doing because, the bandwidth, the financing, the tastes, the sort of globalism, the in the best sense, stuff in all sorts of languages from all sorts of places, being commissioned, showing up, being hits, all the rest of it. I mean, it's so important. It's important for us that we operate a mixed economy. We want to develop and largely control and distribute our own IP. That's the business we've always been in, and that can sometimes be in conflict. With the needs and the appetite and the business models of some of these operators. So it's a bit horses for courses. It's every deal, every show, every opportunity on its own merits. I think it's important. I think one of the things that is good about being a big global Inc. in lots of ways is that we've got a bit of muscle. Mm-hmm. And we can fight for what we believe is ours and what we've rightfully created. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do every deal. Yeah. We can walk away from things, and we do that quite a lot because we've got a strong sense of kind of who we are and what we stand for. But it's it's a kind of balancing act. But I love the scope of what we can do, and the ambition to if you look at I only came in on the back end of the kind of Black Mirror Netflix stuff, but if I look at what's emerging from the Black Mirror format franchise, if I look at the Joe Wrights and the Jodie Fosters and the people who are in it or making the new Black Mirrors, and what Charlie and Annabelle are doing now, their ambition, it's been absolutely been served by that extraordinary Netflix deal, and always grateful Channel 4 for, like they do so often, for being the source of all of that innovation and launching those careers in that brand. But it's now in a place where it can realise different ambitions.
Well, Channel 4 got a little bit mad when they went off.
Yeah, no, I completely
You don't like losing
understand.
something you've nurtured and grown.
Well, the other thing I think that's happening now more and more, which is interesting, is I now see more co-pros between broadcasters and the bigger players. There's a it's kind of settling down less into a kind of standoff and a face-off to a sort of, can we both get something, particularly something ambitious out of this? And, it's not a bad place for a producer to be. We're making, an amazing series. I think we showed a clip in there called Troy, which is the retelling of the Trojan War. Derek Wax's new label, out of Kudos, is making it. It's an incredible piece. I mean, today somebody told me they just, never work with kids and animals. It seems to be a kind of theme of tonight. But they're working with 50...
with Trojans.
Or with Trojans. Thankfully not with Trojans, are on CGI. But they were working with 50 horses today in a sequence. And, could we have done that, done all of this stuff just with the BBC budgets or just with the conventional budgets, not with Netflix? Probably not, no, I think. So hopefully BBC One viewers, UK and the world will see something very special in Troy. And I think there's a rather brilliant business accommodation between Netflix, us, and the BBC over a project like that.
So there's 2 points of contention. One is the sort of global rights issue, because of course Netflix wants global rights. They're all starting to talk about global rights. And as a producer, you're sort of thinking, actually, I might be able to make more money if I could have the rights and sell them country by country, territory by territory.
Absolutely right.
Why am I selling global
important.
rights? So that's a problem.
Yeah.
And you just deal with that.
It is, but I think also it's really important. I mean, I love what MasterChef is, and I love the way. Just to go back to that, I don't think MasterChef would probably be what it is all over the world if it wasn't infused with the local flavours. It wasn't loved individually and particularly by each of those territories. I don't think it could have been
global MasterChef.
No, I really don't. Okay. And and also I think there's another thing which is interesting, and but the OTT platforms are really getting better at it. Is I think the commissioning, I probably would say this because I've been on the other side, but I think a lot of broadcasters' commissioning teams are really good, and you want to work with them. And they, think about working with Sky or Channel 4 or 5 or ITV or the BBC. They add something to the stuff that we're creating. There is a common sense of purpose, and a lot of formats are better and sharper and closer to their audience because of that relationship. And I don't think a lot of the newer platforms have got that yet. They haven't got the maturity of commissioning yet to contribute quite as much. But let me tell you, they're catching up pretty quickly.
The other point of contention is, of course, what I call the battle for talent. We've talked about it. I mean, we've talked about it, and certainly the journalists have talked about the drama bubble and the cost of talent. You can't get a grip to save your life because there's so much stuff going on. So there's that issue, and it also is, how do you make sure you have access to the talent. I mean, I noticed just today you've made a deal with Sharp Jack Media. I think they're out here in the audience.
Guys are here somewhere.
So you've by sort of putting a putting a nice warm blanket around them, you sort of make sure that you know what's going on with them and help them. But what about this battle for talent? I mean, it seems to me that's a huge issue.
It is. Yeah, we're nothing. It's just it's a people business and a talent business. There is nothing else. Trying to explain that to, it's not just about economics. Economics plays a part, but it's about relationships and scope and support and the network you bring to people and all the rest of it. I think that's immensely important. I think it is a battle. I think trying to make yourself number one or two in the queue for some writers, or to lure the right IP generators or the next generation of IP creators to be part of your federation is incredibly important. I think it's probably why we have to remain a federation. I don't think a one-size-fits-all model, come and join our huge monolith is going to cut it. If you're Charlie Brooker or your Kudos or your Shine or your Bandit or your 50 Fathoms or some of the other great scripted or non-scripted program makers, some of whom are here tonight, it's about creating the right shaped space and support, being there when the shit hits the fan, when the chips are down, as well as hopefully occasionally for the bit of bubbly and the celebrations, or to share a bit of intelligence about the networks, or to maybe strong arm platforms around a certain deal from time to time, or use your distribution might to get money in to greenlight productions that are stuck. I think we just got to you've got to find the right balance between being big and being strong and feeling local and particular and customized and bespoke. And if you do that, I think it's a pretty good model for attracting talent. But God, it's it's so competitive, particularly in the scripted space.
Yeah. So how about M&A? Because one way to grow your talent base is to buy people. Just to say, here's a check.
It's very expensive. It's too expensive.
Too expensive.
I think it's prohibitive. I think it's not, it's never a no. No, of course it isn't. We're always shopping for a bargain, aren't we? We're always out there going, that's a bargain. Somebody turned up in a sale. But actually, I'm not sure in the UK. Listen, in other territories, maybe there are other kind of propositions. It's pretty difficult in the UK to justify the kind of values. I would much prefer to grow, to plant some seedlings, to get Sharp Jack started. To spin off Derek Wax, to start the Shiny Button label with the guys who did Murdering Successful, Karen Ross, who came out of MasterChef. Why lose Karen? Why not keep her in the company to develop the next generation of factual formats? We try really hard to hold on to talent that we've nurtured. Charlie Brooker, from researcher, scriptwriter to kind of global brand, from 128th indie in the UK to 21st in a single year. All right, it's just one deal, but that's a kind of extraordinary trajectory. But I think that's the way through this, is becoming a kind of, becoming a magnet for talent, setting them up in the right way, but availing them also to your global network as well as your UK network, because nobody wants to be parochial these days either. Everyone wants access to the sea lanes to get out there to the rest of the world.
But you also, you must get pitches. How many people?
Of course.
How many do you get?
We do. Well, probably an NDA a week, I'd say.
An NDA a week.
A non-disclosure agreement a week, where somebody says, we're looking to sell, or there aren't that many companies of scale left and that are still independent.
In the UK?
And in the UK,
Are you looking at other
We look all
countries?
over the world. Yeah, all over the world.
Are you get intrigued by any of that?
Yeah, from time to time, but again, just, the values, we would prefer to grow and to develop, because justifying some of the, unless it was an absolute game changer, maybe it's a kind of lateral thought. I'm not even sure it's going to be television production. It's going to be something,
might be something else
potentially associated with it that will be the game changer. Yeah, we're always looking.
You might buy a data science firm. Who knows?
Well, I tell you what. Listen, data and data and AI and that kind of intuitive technology. I think it's going to absolutely revolutionise a lot of our. I've seen some of the kind of new experiments with new cameras, the cloud, what you can do with data. What I love is it's not just about production margins; it's also potentially really creative. So, yeah, I think there will be some tech solutions there too.
Let's talk about scripted because we haven't done that. And you've got Kudos. You've talked about we saw Peaky Blinders, Appleyard Tree. Let's say Good Karma Hospital, Broadchurch. I saw Tin Star was on
Tin Star's amazing.
Reel, which was with Sky, right?
It's an amazing piece of work. It's the best piece I think a British company's ever made in North America.
Really?
Personally.
Oh, right.
I've seen a lot of it. I mean, Americans do Americana really, really well. It's an amazing piece of work, but it's not on until the autumn, so I'm lucky enough to have seen it.
And you thought
I think it's incredible. Yeah.
So
Ask Sky, but I think it's incredible.
Yeah. We've talked about sort of the drama bubble and things like that, but what about drama? Because drama is such a big part of. Everyone wants drama. They all want episodic drama. Lots of episodes.
Yeah,
keep the
it's
story going.
Game changing.
How many?
Talk about television. Yeah, I mean, just one stat. Richard and Lucinda and the UK team don't mind me quoting this, but one stat from last year about the UK companies. I think the scripted finances I think they increased last year by 75%, 70-something%, Richard. I normally double every figure, as you know, but 70-something%. In a single year. Now, I don't imagine that will be sustained year on year. It was particularly kind of phenomenal, extraordinary kind of year when a lot of those things were in production. But it kind of tells you a lot about the kind of red hot.
So 70% increase in cost of producing drama.
70% increase in our income from scripted.
From scripted,
and for the first time, probably in the UK, the scripted income was greater than the non-scripted income. Now that's not the same all over the world. Over the world, our global turnover's probably the reverse of that. But it's an amazing time to be able to realise the range of ambitions that we've got. So from Delicious and Fortitude and Guerrilla on Sky to Broadchurch and Good Karma on ITV, which kind of is so important to us to get into the ITV mainstream business. Working with the BBC, who still do incredible things in the scripted space. Channel 4 with Humans and the rest. And the thing that I love about my job, though, the biggest treat is the kind of global world of scripted, because a lot of it is about the UK, and we're right to glory in what the UK can do for the world and for the UK and all of that. But on Monday I'm with the guys from Germany. We partly on an amazing scripted company called Wiedemann and Berg. They're the people who came straight out of film school in Munich to make The Lives of Others. I think it was called The Lives of Others. And an amazing Oscar-winning piece of work. They've just done The Block in Germany. They've just made the first Netflix German language production, which we could show in a second. I work with the people.
And this is the first time you've worked with them, right?
We've worked with Wiedemann and Berg for years, but it's the first time that a German language original piece has been commissioned by Netflix that they've made. We do The Bridge or Bron through Filmlands in Scandinavia. I saw an amazing scripted, if you can see it and you speak French, I don't know if it's in translation yet, on Canal Plus. There's a series called Guyenne or Guyana. It's made by one of our labels in Paris. It's about gold smuggling in French Guiana. It's the most amazing piece of authentic filmmaking. It's honestly, it's riveting. And so it's kind of happening all over the world. The interesting thing, of course, for us is also, can we... I went to Israel recently, and it's like when you go into Israel, it's quite hard to get through immigration in Israel. It's quite, you're standing there, and the customs person said to me, why does Israel need you? Just like that.
That sounds like the
And I was just sort of like this, looking around. What, me? I went, well, I work for this big global production company, and we make, Big Brother and MasterChef. She looked at me like, I said, yeah, we just launched this new sitcom called Nevsu. It means Dalmatian family. She went, Nevsu! She looked at me like that, like as if I was like a returning long lost brother. And she pulled a phone out in the immigration paper. She went, "This is me and the star of Nefsu." In her thing. I went like that. I wasn't sure if it was like we were doing something illegal. I was looking around. And like that. She went, "You're free to go through. Israel welcomes you." Honestly, it was honestly. And I thought, the power of scripted. Yeah. So look out for the Dalmatian Family. It's the hottest little sitcom in Israel on our Rishet channel. So hey, that's the power of.
Should we see the dark clip?
Yeah. So dark is just say it's kind of in the Stranger Things mold. And it's by Wiedemann from Germany. It's the first German language production for Netflix. Kind of just shows you people are making this great stuff, but all over the world.
That looks a little scary.
It's good. It's good, honestly. It's a chiller. It's brilliant.
When's it coming out?
I think it's this autumn, I think, or maybe early next year, I think.
So we're going to go to questions of the audience pretty soon, but I just have one more before I go to them, and then another question I have at the end. We have a new CEO at Channel 4, Alex Mann. We have a new one will be announced at ITV, we assume, relatively soon, because Adam Crozier is leaving. Kevin Ligo has reordered his commissioning team at ITV. We expect to see changes at Channel 4 because obviously Jay Hunt is gone, so we're having a changing of the guard there. What do these changes mean for Endemol Shine in terms of pitching business? I mean,
things can't get any slower, can they? No, well,
new tastes. I mean,
yeah, probably, yeah. But is that a good thing? It probably is. It always is. Mixing up the kind of DNA. I was in mixing up the kind of DNA of commissioning teams is always kind of lively. Will it lead to some delays? Kind of slightly longer queues at immigration, commissioning. Yeah, it probably will. I mean, I was with the BBC yesterday and was looking with Alison Kirkham, looking at the factual team, which she's very proud of, which she said, it took me 2 years to put this team together. I mean, I think the interesting thing about commissioning and, and that does create a bit of a backlog, and it's a brilliant team, they're doing some very good things, but I think it does. I think the interesting thing is when I was a bit younger, everybody was fighting to be in commissioning. And being on the broadcast side and the platform side was the only place. It was the sweet, you had the cash, you had the power, it felt quite sexy. It was all quite new. The audiences were there. I think it's harder to recruit the great people for some of those broadcasters and some of those platforms now, because I think the fun and the action has shifted to the sector. Now, which is the production sector.
To the production sector.
Yeah, I do, honestly.
Also, a lot of the commissioners are going to the Netflix and Amazons of the world.
And listen, they recruit. Actually, it's interesting. Netflix recruits some very talented Brits who've gone across to LA. So yeah, they can kind of make your dreams come true, can't they? Move to LA, join this kind of glorious organisation, be one of world-leading brands. Yeah, the competition for great people to be in channels is tougher than it's ever been.
So in terms of how you're going to get ready for this, is there anything you do, or you just kind of see what happens and
hunker down,
take your book,
pray,
these are my best shows,
network a bit? No, I think just be as diversified as we can be. Back a bunch of different horses. Recruit great creative people. I mean, just believe that good stuff will win in the end.
Let's go to you all, because I've been. Let's give you a question. That's this man here, and they're going to bring you a mic. So where's our mic, girl? That's this fellow here, and then on this side, did I see a hand? Okay, that's this guy here. Give him a mic. So if you could stand up if you'd like, that'd be helpful. But if you at least tell us who you are, that'd be fantastic.
Hi there, Ed Scott from Shameless. I really enjoyed watching the MasterChef VT because I used to do similar things for American Idol, and what else did I do? Family Feud. So things like that were really interesting. What I find difficult is with global formats and local production, when you got the likes of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was ruthlessly controlled down to the music, down to the presenter, down to the set, to the likes of Big Brother, which I saw on CBS last Thursday as well, compared to Channel 5, which is quite a different programme. Then you got the likes of New Faces, which is very, very similar to Britain's Got Talent. But then you got the issues with Pop Idol and the X Factor, where they were sued. How difficult is it to draw the line on what's a shameless rip-off, and how the hell do you police it?
That's a great question. We're probably going to have to do this one in the bar, I think, afterwards, because I'm not sure of my public views.
Very carefully.
My public views are airable. It's bloody hard. I mean, there's not a week goes by, particularly I think if you're a big confederation like ours, that you don't, spot something, want to make further inquiries about how a format has come about, how it's got launched, what its kind of provenance is. I think you've got to, now and then. I think you've got to step up to the mark and, and take people on and contest some of this stuff, because otherwise, I think you just end up being ripped off. But I think you've also, from time to time, got to kind of grit your teeth and, and fall back on the fact there's only, 5 formats that have ever been created, and we're all, like Adam and Eve. We're all from that place, and a lot of the beats and a lot of the twists and the turns. I did back in the day. I drew up a format called Castaway 2000 on the BBC with Jeremy Mills from Lion, which was, which I think showed about a year before Big Brother, I think, or a year or two before Big Brother. We didn't really know what we were doing. We just kind of did something and went for it, and we felt a bit kind of millennial and all that stuff. And then a bunch of other things kind of cropped up, in the, islands and survivals and whatever it might be. And I don't know, stuff just in the air. Is it accidental? Does one thing lead to another? Do people build on ideas that people put out there? I like to think it's more the latter than the kind of shameless rip-off. But from time to time, I saw something trailed about a week ago in Europe that it just made me feel pissed off.
So how much
somebody done it, but every now and then I just have to. I think you just have to move on. And
do you chase any of these people?
From time to time, we do. Yeah. But it's tough to prove it.
Okay. So our other mic is there. If you could tell us who you are, and if we could get this mic to this fellow here. Yeah.
Yes. Hello, it's Chris Windle here from my own YouTube channel, I should say. I wanted to ask a question. You did say you worked with David Lidderman
against him, really.
You worked against him? Oh, okay.
Well, he was against me.
Well,
I loved him.
Oh, you loved him, jolly good.
No, he's all right.
Well, you may or may not.
Yeah, no, he's very, very good ITV controller. Yeah.
That's good to hear. He did a program on Channel 4. I don't know if you saw it, but it was Who Killed the Sitcom. And one of the things he said
didn't pin it on me, did
he? No, he didn't pin it on you.
Bastard.
But the thing he did say that I think has led partly to it being squeezed in certain departments is reality television. I think it's unanimously agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I was a financial advisor, which thank God I'm not, but if I was a financial advisor...
Don't put money into comedy.
Well, actually, what I was going to say was that, you see, I think of reality TV as being a depreciating asset because unlike comedy and good quality drama, which is appreciating assets, you couldn't really... Put it this way, you could watch an episode of Porridge or Any Fools and Horses over and over again, whereas I don't think you could watch an episode of, dare I say it, Big Brother or anything like that again. So do you think reality TV has got long left, and do you think it...
So I'm probably like you then, sort of behind this. If there's one genre I love most of all, and as a viewer and as a scheduler or as a commissioner or as a producer, when it kind of pops up, the magic of a sitcom comedy, it's so hard to do. I remember Greg Dyke saying to me actually that ITV moved out of sitcoms actually when I was at the BBC and were really pushing hard to get the next Dinner Ladies or My Family or whatever it might be. I also launched loads of glorious failures. But he said to me, we're not doing sitcom. We're not moving sitcoms to comedy. We're moving out because too many of them don't hit. It's a waste of money. We're putting our money into scripted, but we're sticking with drama. We're going to do London's Burning and and all the rest of it. They were horribly kind of successful, Peak Practice, blah blah blah, all the rest of it. And I completely understand that because but the likes of when you get Catastrophe, Fleabag, all the rest of it, it's such a glorious thing. No, of course I don't think that reality is a depreciating asset. No, I honestly listen. There are as many stories as life throws at you, and there are lots of different ways of telling those stories, digitally, in linear terms, whatever it might be, and it's kind of horses for courses. But would I love us to, as a group, to have the hit sitcom or more hit sitcoms, I would love it. It would make me very proud because it's such a tough thing to do.
Okay. Question here. Tell us who
Hi,
you
Peter,
are.
Mark from The Mirror.
Hi, Mark.
Is there any chance you could share your true feelings on the ratings of Big Brother at the moment? Because it seems to be doing particularly bad. Even the catch-up figures are not.
Why don't you tell it like it is?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Come on, sugarcoat it.
no. 'Cause I watched it like most people,
Yeah, I
from
watched it.
the very start, and we could name all of the housemates. Now I can't name one. Is there a chance it could be wrested? And how long can you perhaps get away with?
You're on the comedy. You're in the comedy gang. Yeah.
How long?
No, I listen.
Yeah.
I think it's listen. It's playing. I think now in 29 territories at the moment. So it's working in lots of different places in lots of different ways all over the world. Last year, it had its first digital-only manifestation in the States, which was really successful. Listen, it's got a few challenges. It's got an incumbent brand that's come into the market as well on another channel, which people have done particularly well. Just got to keep battling on. It's like painting the fourth bridge. You've just got to get at it creatively again. You got to, get people in there up for a fight. Got to think kind of originally about what its next manifestation is. No, I'm really positive about the future of Big Brother. It's only turning 18, and I see it as having a pretty long life. It was the original and the first, and I think when you and I are 102 and we're talking about current television, Big Brother will be on in a bunch of countries, and hopefully in the UK.
So you don't go with this idea that they should rest it in the UK?
No.
No. All right.
Not at all.
Is it something that you're forced to put out because of the Endemol umbrella, or
No, nobody's forcing us to do
Channel 5 wanted it,
anything. We try and get kind of stuff commissioned and try and make it as original as we possibly can. And we, if it's not on its top form, we need to keep changing it.
could you take it abroad, perhaps?
No, we make it in 29.
No, 29 countries.
Could we
Big Brother.
take people from the UK abroad?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on Brexit. It's got to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Can we get all those people? We could do a Big Brother after Brexit.
Okay. Can I move the mic?
Yeah,
on?
no, we shouldn't rule anything out. Keep supporting it, if you will, or keep watching it at least.
Okay. So, Peter.
Hi, Peter. Peter White from Broadcast Magazine. You talked about investing in indies and labels, and I think Endemol Shine in the UK probably now has over 20, or give or take, with the one you added today. Is there a point at which there are too many indies in the UK, and those companies are competing for the same schedule? And is that perhaps why you're now looking at investing in AI companies?
No, I think nobody loves some AI companies in addition to the indies. It's not a kind of either or. In fact, some of them could be quite complementary to some of that stuff. No, honestly, I think it's kind of horse of courses. Is the landscape incredibly competitive? Yeah, it really is. Do I know how all the scripted companies are paying, their overheads and getting back? I don't. I would lose sleep if I were about 50 of those scripted companies right now, because I think I think the arms race is horrific in that sector. But I also think the UK scripted sector, for instance, is particularly brilliant, and it keeps reimagining itself, and the models it uses and the tax breaks help. I think moving out of London, for instance, is interesting, looking for talent and facilities elsewhere. I've been talking to somebody at the weekend who's filming in South Wales. The new studios are opening down there in South Wales. Incredible facilities. So I think that, all those things are probably safeguarding the kind of UK scene against failure. That degree of kind of diversity and kind of reimagining is really important, but it is horrendously competitive. And the interesting thing, like I said, is doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, you get no favours from commissioners. I mean, the brilliant thing about the UK scene is the best ideas will out, and it's just Darwinian. And as long as you're up for the cut and thrust, join the party. But in some sectors, I think of our business,
Like in scripted.
just given kind of values and costs, it must be tough.
So the sotto voce, I think, for Peter's question, and I could be wrong, so forgive me if I am, but my question would be, are you sort of shielding some companies that shouldn't be shielded because maybe they're, you see what I mean? Are there too many labels?
Are there too many in the sector? I mean, not in ours, in our cluster of companies, no. But I think we've got a really lovely balance. Will some come and go? I mean, kind of, who knows? That's just part of the kind of creative business cycle. But yeah, I think it's easier being inside a bigger, under that distribution shield right now, having the ability to kind of, get the group support and get the group distribution and use a bit of group intel or muscle to get the right deals. I just think it's tougher being out there genuinely on your own now, paying kind of Hollywood prices to make UK drama. That is very tough.
Yeah, okay. Is there another question? Back there, you have a question? Yes? Okay, so back there. Anybody over here? One more? No? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Peter. I'm Dean Webster, a freelance AP. I'm 26, so only just a little bit younger than you, I think. And
Can't see you may
Flattery
not.
will get you everywhere.
And I wanted to know, in the time since you were 26 years old, how do you think the television industry has changed, and what advice would you give to someone who is 26 now?
Yeah, good God, I think it's really hard. You end up slipping into so much cliche when you answer those questions. So forgive me. I mean, I think if you're passionate and you really want to be in this sector, there isn't a better time to want to get into it. Is it more? Are the employee bodies some of them a bit less established, more fragmented? Is it a bit more bewildering, the kind of range of choice, the kind of different options, the length of contracts? Yeah, probably. Is it, tad too casualized? Yeah, I think it probably is. I think we need to, we're not going to get the IP generators of the future or get people to kind of commit to working in our companies, in our sector, unless we treat people properly. I think that's really important. But, at the same time, when I was 20...
Are you doing something about that? Because I know, like, Darren Childs at UKTV, it has a whole program for that. He sort of says, they're all going to go work for Facebook and Google if we don't do something.
Right. No, I think we all are. One of the things I'm proudest of in the UK, for instance, just below the trumpets of the UK gang is, the first big survey we did in the company last year, 90-something% of the people who were surveyed, of the whole scene here, 1,000 people, said they'd be proud to recommend Endemol Shine as employer to their pals, family, whatever it might be. And I think that's we'd have killed for those sorts of survey scores at the BBC, even though the BBC was a rather brilliant employer. It just had a different relationship with its staff.
Yeah, sure.
I think we've got to create an environment which, that is fun, that values you, that develops you, all the rest of it. And that hopefully tries to help you progress your career, gives you new opportunities. I would just go for it. My own kids are getting into the sector doing all sorts of different things I never dreamed of. And none of them are working for me. None of them, I think, are working for the Beeb. Interestingly, they don't particularly want to work for the established broadcasters anymore. I think you're right. They want to work somewhere in the indie sector or on another platform that I don't even understand what its business model is. I think it's exciting, and I think you should just go for it because it's a brilliant time to be making content here from the UK.
So I have one last question before we close, and I'll go for a much-deserved drink. You've had a fantastic set of jobs, and you've now got this global remit, which must be fun. A lot of air miles, I assume you're collecting.
Lots of colds and flus.
Right. Exactly. So it's a plain cold. Obviously, I'm not saying you're going to be leaving Endemol Shine anytime soon, but do you think there's another job in you? And what might that be?
Saga.
Jay Hunt's job is up for.
No,
would you go for that?
Yeah, I think the one thing I know is I love being in production. And so whatever I do, I love the blend of UK and global. I think that's why. Sometimes you get a call from the right person. I just got a call from the right person to come and join Endemol Shine because I love working with Sophie Turner-Lang. But I've since discovered a rather brilliant UK and global family. So no, I think it would take a lot to to prize me out of the Endemol Shine gang. But, who knows? Saga, Stena stairlifts,
Yeah.
football management. If Burnley FC, say Burnley FC called my team, I would drop Endemol Shine like a brick. So if Sean Dyche ever goes from Burnley, I am Richard, Lucinda, guys, Lisa, I'm off. You know,
Yeah.
it's a good question. It's one for you and me in a few minutes.
Is there
The
anything?
Ginger Mourinho, we call him in our house.
The Ginger Mourinho. Is there anything, I mean, when you look, because we talked a lot about the future sort of interspersed in this conversation, is there anything that you look at and you sort of think, wow, that's going to change television? Or, wow, that scares the pants off
I mean,
me,
genuinely, I
or
mentioned it in passing, but artificial intelligence.
Artificial
definitely.
intelligence, yeah.
I think it's, you know, the first format that uses it, the gear that employs it to change the way we think about making shows, you know, intuitive technology, which is being developed now, you know, around the things that we're making, probably in ways we've made the same for the past 10 years. I think that's going to revolutionise things.
Yeah, very cool.
Honestly.
So you're looking to buy something maybe possibly.
Well, I'll just work with all those clever people who are developing it.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of you for being here. It's been great having you as an audience. I want to thank our microphone girls. I want to thank the tech team. And I particularly want to thank Peter Salmon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.